Next, we have Kim Naples, Don't Fear the Technology Completely, a call to action for youth librarians.
So thanks for coming, everyone, and thank you for the organizers for putting this on. I think this is a really cool thing they're doing today. So I'm going to be talking about the intersection of oppression, technology, and library school. This is a lot to tackle in 20 minutes, so you'll probably have a lot of questions, and I hope that you ask them at the end, because my goal is to talk for less than 20 minutes so we can have a discussion at the end. And you can also email me or tweet at me if you want to continue the conversation there. So I'm going to go through a few points. First, I'm going to talk about the gender and racial disparity in the technology fields. And then I'm going to talk about how that disparity creates technology that supports oppressive systems. And then I'm going to talk about how library schools can upset this phenomenon. So a little bit about me. I'm in my final semester here at GISLIS. I'm a master's student. I currently work at the Teen Open Lab at the Urbana Free Library. It's a digital media creative hangout space inspired by the new media model. So this is some of the stuff that we do. We have really good artists, and we make buttons, and it's kind of the fun stuff. But I think that these kind of spaces are where we can start doing some of the things that I'm going to talk about. And also, when I first came to library school, I came from an English background, which many of us do also. And I might get in trouble for saying this, but I was kind of sick of talking about books and reading books, and I wanted to learn more about the technology side. I was really interested in how we consume information and how technologies influence that. But at the same time, I didn't feel like I had enough technology experience and skills to take the really techie classes. Like, I never took 452 and learned how to code, even though it was on my list of things to do. And I don't want to give you a ton of stuff that you should learn, because that always kind of frustrated me when I first got here. It was like, you need to learn this, learn this, learn this. And I was like, ugh. So I'm just going to kind of present some ideas to think about and maybe inspire you to learn some stuff, take some interesting classes. So I was tired of reading, so I didn't totally fit in with the youth services tract. I wanted to do more technology stuff, but I didn't totally feel like I fit in with that either. And I'm also really passionate about social justice and radical librarianship. Also, I did not know Gwen Stefani was in this movie until I got this meme, so fun fact. So my talk today is my attempt to combine these three things, and this is also, I think, going to be the guiding point of my career, which I think Annie kind of talked about this morning, or maybe it was Brianna, sorry, I forget. Okay, so the racial and gender disparity in the technology fields. So these are infographics taken from code.org, and I'm assuming that these are the stats of education right now. So my assumption is that people who are now being educated in these fields are going to go into them professionally. So out of all the AP high school classes, only 0.7% of high schoolers enroll in computer science classes. And of this 0.7%, only 15 are women and only 8 are Hispanic Americans or African Americans. And then on the college level, while 50% of bachelor's degrees are earned by women, just 12% of computer science degrees are awarded to women. So what does that mean? Why do we care? What does it mean that only a small percent of our population is involved in creating these tools that we deal with every day, and that have such a huge impact on our day-to-day lives and our futures? This quote comes from Audrey Waters. Her blog, Hack Education, is really, really interesting. I think librarians are educators, and we might think about that more broadly. But anyway, so if you're interested in education and particularly, I think she talks about high school and elementary school education. But anyway, she's awesome. And in her blog post, Men Still Explain Technology to Me, she says, I know I have to come right out and say it because very few people in education technology will. There is a problem with computers, culturally, ideologically. There's a problem with the internet. Largely designed by men from the developed world, it is built for men of the developed world. Men of science, men of industry, military men, venture capitalists. Despite all the hype and hope about revolution and access and opportunity that these new technologies will provide, They do not negate hierarchy, history, privilege, power. They reflect those. They channel it, they can concentrate it in new ways and in old. An example of this comes from Virginia Eubanks' book, Digital Dead End, Fighting for Social Justice in the Information Age. And this story comes from pages 72 to 73. So she works at the YWCA in Troy, New York, and this book is a compilation of her time spent there, the conversations that she has with these women, and she's having this conversation with this woman named Kathy who does data entry at an insurance company. So it's a high-tech job. She has all of these basic tech skills that society tells us that we need to learn if we're going to be successful in society. So she's at work, and she talks about the bloodhounds in the ID department that keep track of every website that their employees go onto. So she goes onto her bank account to see if she has enough money for lunch. And the IT guy who keeps track of all this comes to her desk and says, "Hey, Kathy, what are you doing?" She says, "Oh, can I check my bank account so I can see if I can go get lunch?" And he says, "No, not on company time." So this story is in opposition to the rhetoric that we're told about, like the Google campus, that if you work in technology, you'll have this really awesome, flexible work environment where you'll be empowered to be independent and segues and free lunches, and that's just not the reality for a lot of people in our population. So this is just an example of the way that this woman's job in technology is actually enforcing her lower position in society because she's a woman. Oh, and the other part of the story is she's a working mom, so she has to work at this data entry job because it has the flexible hours that she can also take care of her child. So that's another whole issue. So what can we do about this as librarians? And I think that if we have more diversity in the design and production of technology, then we will have more technology that is socially just. And I think librarians have a role to play in increasing diversity in technology, especially youth librarians, because we work in a position where you can empower someone in their ability to design new technologies. And you can overturn this rhetoric that there's only certain people that are tech people, that there's something inherent in being like a computer person, which I think is complete nonsense. But in order to do that, we have to start with ourselves, and we have to stop saying things like, "I'm not a computer person, I'm not a tech person." I hear this in the hallways here at GISLIS, and it drives me nuts. Because I'm telling you, there's nothing inherent into being good with computers. And I actually think that we, as librarians, the skills that we learn here in school actually equip us to be really good with technology. So I have secret powers. I'm a librarian. This is true. So this meme, as an IT person, I rarely know how to fix your issue. I'm just better at Google than you are. So this is all IT is. You know, the help desk people know this, that someone comes to you with a problem, and if you don't know how to fix it, you just look it up. And like, this is research. This is what librarians do. So librarians can do tech troubleshooting. They can learn how to use new technologies because we know how to do really good research. We know how to find really good quality information. So what's on this image doesn't really totally matter because it's kind of hard to read. What I want is the visual of this flowchart. So this is what should I read next? A hipster lit flowchart from Goodreads. So the first question, have you read Infinite Jest? No, you aren't a hipster. Yes. And then it goes through all of these books. Have you read this? Have you read that? So this is reader's advisory, right? That someone comes to us and they're like, "Oh, I like this. I want this other book." So you're like, "Do you like this?" And like you ask them all these questions. And that's what you do in a reference interview too. Someone comes to you with a problem, and then you ask them a bunch of questions to actually get to their information need, and then give them the information that they want. And then that's tech troubleshooting. That you're like, "Oh, this technology doesn't work," or "I don't know how to use this." That you just throw stuff at it until something works. So I think librarians should not be intimidated by technology. You know, that if you have a problem, just don't automatically like, "Oh my God, like, I can't do this." Yes, you can. But also take that with a grain of salt, that I do think it's important for librarians to like learn technology and be confident in technology, but I also want to be aware of technological determinism, where that technology will solve all of our problems, and it won't. So these are photos from UMedia, and UMedia is awesome, and everyone wants to do what UMedia is doing, but that everyone can't do that. And my concern with this is that everyone wants to jump on like the makerspace UMedia bandwagon. It's like, oh, we need to get a 3D printer. So yeah, your library has money and they buy a 3D printer. And then what happens? It like sits in a corner, and if librarians don't know how to use it, if they don't feel confident teaching themselves to use it, what's going to happen? In my experience, the people that will interact with it and will go over and figure out how to use it and tinker with it are the people who've been told by society that that's what they're supposed to do, right? Which we know are men who are usually white or Asian, or these stereotypes that we know well, but this is one of the things where it's true. So if you want to kind of upset this exclusionary forces in technology, we have to create structures of support around these technologies. So this is outreach and engagement, which librarians know how to do. So I think that in library school we need to talk more about these issues, and we need to, be more aware that the technologies and the skills that we're learning are transferable to other things, that they're not just for librarianship, that they're for wider stuff. And here at GISLIS, my experience is that the classes that I've taken where we talked about these issues, Bonnie Mack's class and Martin Wolski's class, and I think Emily Knox does like a independent study on makerspace stuff. And a little shout out to Martin. He's teaching this creative learning spaces or informal learning spaces class that I would totally take if I was still going to be here, but I'm not, and it's really sad. So I want to empower you all to have confidence in figuring out new technologies and figuring out how stuff works, but at the same time to be skeptical of new technologies and think deeply about how they will impact your library and whether or not it's wise to buy that 3D printer. So, are there any questions?
Martin wanted to comment that people have to rule technology and make it to use, but the technology companies, through their products, have some unhealthy social implications. Technical determinism can be really dangerous. You do not have to be skeptical towards new technologies, just find the way you can use it effectively.
Right. Questions for Kim? No. For your own purpose. Very true.
Yeah, Martin, that's a really great comment. And yeah, I get frustrated when people, just because something's new, they have to they want it. And, do you actually need it? Is it actually going to be useful and impactful in your life? So, yeah.
So I do have a question. Or did I? Okay. So again, this is Alice. And I'm not sure if this is something you've looked into or not, so it's totally cool if you don't have an answer. Or thoughts about it, but I know there are a lot of discrepancies in terms of technology between various libraries that have more money than others. So even some of the lower income areas in the Chicago neighborhoods might have more technology than people in rural libraries. So how do you think that different libraries with different amounts of funding can still provide access to technology for their younger patrons in particular?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Because, one of the things with UMedia is they have so much money, so they can get all these cool things and hire these cool people. There's always grants. And, 3D printers are like $1,200, but you don't have to do 3D printing to do demystifying technology stuff. You can, the e-waste people, you can get some of these old computers that no one else wants and just take it apart. Or even Legos are really cheap to just mess with Legos. That's a makery thing. And there are a lot of resources. There are a lot of blogs, librarians talking about this specific thing. They're I don't have enough money, but I want to do these cool things. What can I do? I think Teen Librarian Toolbox and there's another one I'm thinking of that I can't totally remember right now. I can post that somewhere once I find it, though.
Hi, Sveta again, for those online. So thank you for your presentation, and I just wanted to kind of shout out to like all the awesome things that you cite. And so what is your perspective on how, this is something that's come up in our keynote this morning and then a couple of other times in our conversations. What are your perspectives on how LIS education should incorporate theory to talk about these issues, since you do cite some like fantastic theory?
Yeah, I think that I was really lucky to have a good, even before I came to GISLIS, I had a really good theoretical background in social justice stuff, queer theory, critical race theory. But I think the beauty of Virginia Eubanks's book is it's a perfect combination of theory and then the stuff that she's doing on the ground. And I think ideally that's what our classes should be. But I think that's also an interesting difference for me between LEAP classes and on-campus classes, because on-campus classes, it's mostly people that we don't really have too much library experience yet, but then on LEAP, sometimes it's people who are practicing librarians. So it's pretty easy for them to say, oh, this happened in my, my job the other day. And I think that professors should try to open up opportunities for those conversations. And then it's also a challenge that I've noticed with some of the GISLIS instructors, the instructors who have been librarians in the past and the ones who haven't. So like Betty Bush is a badass, awesome librarian, and like I could listen to her talk about her stories all day. And then you have Martin, I love him, but he will talk theory to you all day. So it's like the ideal would be a combination of those two people. So yeah, as much as I didn't totally love 501 and 502, I feel like they were like, it's important. And I think Brianna said that this morning of like, yeah, you do want to learn all of these skills, but it's helpful to have the theoretical background, like the big picture of why it's important. So yeah, this is like what I was trying to get at, that like there are bigger societal things happening that we need to be aware as librarians, and that, the problem of like it being a very like librarian flood or a very female flooded field, that this is an example where we can use that for good, that like as mostly women we can be role models to younger women to like feel empowered to get into technology.
And Alice, again, part of our conversations yesterday was about the inclusion of theory and practice. And one of the results of that conversation was seeing theory and practice as being on a spectrum, and using them both.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'll do one. It's Kate again. Kate McDowell, faculty assistant dean. Anyhow, trying to be transparent. Kim, I just had a comment I wanted to make, and this may or may not be part of your investigations of UMedia, but I'm aware of a couple of interesting things about the development of UMedia. Even though they've been a model, I think, in many, many ways, there are two gaps that I know of, and this is from my having talked to people there, so this is not really so much publications I've read as conversations I've had, so I won't go into great detail about this. But one is their hiring practices, that they have hired not only non-LIS people, but actually there was a major labor dispute, as I understand it, at Chicago Public Library around the hiring of essentially, more kind of, I would call it Apple Store qualified employees to begin the UMedia model. So I don't want to disparage Apple Store in this moment, or the people who would be qualified in those ways, but I do want to distinguish. It's interesting to have within the setting of a Chicago Public Library institution with specific historical commitments to library and information science, a subset that's also getting lots of media attention that has different employment practices. The other thing about UMedia, and this one's more about the youth, which is always where I focus, and I talk about this in my youth services community engagement course too, is that UMedia has its limits as a model, because even though they provide wonderful resources, you age out of that model. And so what does it mean socially to provide people from like the ages of 12 to 18 with fantastic digital resources to make things. And then at 19, they have the same things everybody else has at the library. What does that do? I don't think we really have an answer to that question yet, but that was the problem that UMedia was beginning to encounter a couple years ago, the last time I had a tour there. So I just wanted to offer those as kind of, if critical theory in relation to these things, I think has to go all the way down. And it's hard to go all the way down in every area, right?
Yeah.
So patience with Betty, patience with Martin. There's no way one person could do all of what you're imagining. I just respect it. But and I'm pointing those out because I happen to know those things about UMedia, but probably that's not something any other instructor happens to know, and there's stuff I don't know.
Yeah.
So anyhow, just wanted to offer that too.
Yeah, but to respond to that, because these are things that I've thought about. So as far as the teens aging out, at the Urbana Free Library, what we do is when the teens age out, we try to have them come back as volunteers. So yeah, an example is Naomi, who drew the Mario, and she drew the Mario over here. She aged out, and she comes back and she volunteers. But it is a challenge because as a teen, kind of as like a friend of all these people, she just wants to hang out with them. So it's hard to be like, to push her to actually become an instructor, to like greet new people as they come in the door. But that's like, that should be our challenge, that it's like, it should be part of my job to empower her to be an instructor, to say, hey, Naomi, like, you're really good at teaching this digital drawing tablet. And she's like, am I? I'm like, yeah, like, you're teaching. And she's like, no. I'm like, yeah, you are. And like, you're doing a really good job and you need to keep doing it. So yeah, I don't know if UMedia does that, but also the luxury at the Teen Open Lab, we're small, so we can do that. That like, we only have 3 or 4 people age out at a time, so, you can like invite them to come back. And the other thing, you said about the staff. When I was at ALA Midwinter, the UMedia had a thing, and they spoke, and I went, and then I talked to one of the librarians afterwards, and I was like, hey, like, I really love what UMedia was doing. Like, I would love to work there. Do you like have any advice for me? And she like went on, and she does like the podcasting stuff, and I was like, oh, did you teach that to yourself? Did you already know it? Did they teach it to you? And she's like, oh, I have a background in film, so I already knew it. And I was like, oh my God, so like, you're just continuing this, like, once again, theory that I'm not good enough. I don't know enough. Like, even though, so she had her, she went to NYU and got her degree in film, and then decided to become a librarian and got her master's. So it's like this kind of frustrating thing that UMedia is saying, that you need to be a mentor, you need to be like an expert in, audio production or something in order to work there. And I would like to challenge the idea that you need to be an expert in everything. That like, it's great to be a mentor, but at the same time, like, I think Annie said this, that you don't have to know everything. And that's actually kind of empowering for the teens, because like, the reason why Naomi's so awesome at the digital tablets is I don't know anything about the digital tablets. So like, when someone comes in and they want to do something, I'm like, yo, Naomi, come help her, because I don't know what I'm doing. So that's a strength, I think. And and these are like so many things that I want everyone to know. But there's just like, there is so much. It's so true that like, every GISLIS professor can't be perfect at everything and know everything. Yeah, but no, I love GISLIS, and I love my experience here. Just want to say that. Okay, cool.
And we're out of time for questions, but I do want to read a few comments online. Theoretical background on social science disciplines and a good overview of library and IT skills can be a really good mixture of skills and pieces of knowledge. I have degrees from history, European studies, and LIS, and seems to me quite useful for using skills from different disciplines together. Access to media has several challenges. For example, Netflix issue. Less content in Europe for the same price as the US. That's really sad. Not to mention, to force academic intellectual to get academic ebooks from pirate sources because the legal funding and legal library service alternatives. Thanks, Martin. So if you have any more questions for any of our presenters, you can feel free to talk to them throughout the rest of the symposium. But for now, we're going to break for lunch. So please join us again in this room at 2:00. Thanks.